It's Sunday, August 3rd, 2025. Welcome to Make It Make Sense. I'm Granthermes. So I know this is in your feeds on Sunday, even though I said it was going to be in your feeds on Saturday, even though normally it's Fridays when these interviews drop. It has been a week of unforeseen technical problems here at Make It Make Sense, so I'm really sorry about that. But I think this is actually a perfect Sunday conversation for you to listen to. My guest today is Mike Nellis. He is a Democratic Party insider in all senses of the word. He was a former senior advisor to then Attorney General Kamala Harris. He founded the Kamala Harris campaign group, White Dudes for Harris. He helped Adam Schiff go from California congressman to California senator. He was a senior advisor on that campaign. He's currently a senior advisor for the Senate campaign here in Michigan for Mallory McMorrow, and he's also advising at least 4 potential Democratic presidential candidates for 2028, including Governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, and New Jersey Senator Cory Booker. He's also got a brand new Substack right now, as he's also sort of trying to figure out this space of moving from consultant to political content creator. His brand new Substack is called Endless Urgency, and if you haven't checked it out, you really should. And I think he brings on a lot of interesting guests, and it's a really authentic and honest conversation that he's having over there. But he decided to bring a little bit of that to Make It Make Sense this week, and I think that we did have a really good, honest, authentic conversation about, first, the Jeffrey Epstein saga, and not just what's happening in MAGA world and how this might reverb, the stuff that I've talked about in the past, but also how the Democratic Party should be, and shouldn't be handling the Epstein story. And then we move on to talk about his former boss, Kamala Harris, and her decision this week to not run for governor of California, potentially, and most likely, leaving the door wide open for her to run again for president in 2028, and what that'll mean for the broader party as it looks to have a messy, open primary without a sitting president in the race. And then we also talk a little bit about why politicians are just so weird and how come there aren't more normal people in politics right now. I think it's a great conversation and you're really going to enjoy it. But before we get to that, make sure you're subscribed or following the show in whatever podcast app you listen to it on. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications on YouTube if you're a watcher there. Sign up for the Make It Make Sense Substack, where I've got brand new bonus content going up each week. It's just $5 a month to get access to that. And, as always, share the show on social media. It's Mims News Pod. That's MIMS News Pod, all one word on every platform. I am at Granthermes on X and Bluesky, and at Granthermes TV on everything else. All right, let's get to the show. We're heading into the final stretch of summer, and let's face it, you need some new sunglasses. Your old ones are scraped or scuffed, or maybe, like I did, you sat on them because you left them in the car, and it's time to replace them so you can finish out the summer in style. That's where Akila comes in. Independently designed and handcrafted in LA, they offer timeless style, uncompromising quality, all without the inflated price tag. And their styles are unisex and look great. I really like their Essential line. It's a cool throwback look that really fits my day-to-day style. I can throw them on and know that they'll fit my fit. And you can feel good about wearing Akila sunglasses too, whether it's the UV blocking sunglasses, the blue light clear lenses, or the prescription eyewear. It's all made from 50% recycled materials, including recycled lenses, eco-friendly plant-based plastics, and it's shipped to you in sustainable, plastic-free, biodegradable packaging. Plus, all Akila frames come back with a 1-year warranty, just in case anything should happen to them. You just ship them back and they'll fix them up, or they'll get you some new ones. So right now, you can get an exclusive 10% off your next pair of Akila glasses, their highest discount of the summer, when you use the code MIMS25 at checkout. That's MIMS25 on your entire order. Now, Make It Make Sense does get a cut of that, but, it's just another reason to go check them out. Protect your eyes, support the show. It's a win-win. So visit Akila.la, that's Akila, and use the promo code MIMS25 at checkout. Akila, unisex handmade sunglasses from LA. Independent style meets unbeatable prices. Elevate your look with modern eyewear concepts. Hey listener, you know what the show is all about breaking down the news in a way that actually makes sense. No spin, just real reporting and smart conversations. And as an audience, you're sharp, curious, and engaged. And I know that you value where you spend your time and money. So if you're a brand, an organization, or a cause that aligns with truth, trust, and just cutting through the noise, then we want to partner with you. Whether you're launching a new product, pushing a policy, or you just want to get your message in front of an audience that values insight over outrage, let's make it make sense together. For ad rates, sponsorship packages, and custom campaigns, you can email ads@matchbookmediapod.com. That's ads@matchbookmediapod.com. Because the smartest conversations deserve the smartest partners. Okay, let's get on with the show. Link to the Substack and everything, which is fantastic. By the way, man, I was reading it this morning. It's really good. Actually, that's actually a really good place to start, I think. What has it been like for you to make the switch from traditional Democratic political operative kind of guy into the Substack creator space you're in now? Because as somebody who's a journalist on not the other side of that, but kind of the other side of that, it's been a really interesting shift for me.
I'm still getting used to anybody caring what I have to say outside of a handful of Democratic candidates that sometimes listen to me. I think a lot of times it's funny when I get yelled at online. People will be like, "Why did you give that terrible advice to Kamala Harris?" Or "Why did you just say?" And be like, "I didn't say any of that." So they don't know what I'm doing, and they don't know how often I'm giving a piece of advice that isn't listened to. I think for me, I'm really tired of turning the TV on. And every time I look at MSNBC or CNN and there's some person who's a Democratic strategist that I've never heard of, and I Google their LinkedIn and they're like, I was deputy something on this one campaign that didn't win. And then they're telling me how to win elections when I've been doing this for 2 decades. And I had a 92% win rate in 2022. I had a 72%, I think 73% win rate in 2024. And to me, we need more people who know what they're doing to step forward to start explaining things to people, because there's a lot of ignorance about how the Democratic Party works. So last year, I fell kind of backwards into being a content creator, being somebody who was known. I'd been off social media for years, basically for the most part, from Donald Trump getting elected the first time until Kamala Harris became the nominee. I was online, but I was not posting a lot publicly, maybe a little bit on LinkedIn about my mental health and my weight loss journey. And then when Kamala became the nominee, I rejoined Twitter and started to get out there because I wanted to say nice things about Harris, because I worked for her for a long time and I thought she's a wonderful person. She was always really good to me. I wanted people to know that because I knew that there would be a bunch of garbage coming her way with a 107-day campaign. And then a confluence of things, which was like founding White Dudes for Harris, getting subpoenaed by the House Republicans for a right-wing conspiracy theory that is, to this day, flat out false. And then starting to do a little bit of TV because of the Harris stuff kind of made me go, all right, well, maybe I can do this, right? Like I did the first thing, did pretty well, did the next thing, kept doing well. And I stepped into this Substack space where 2 months ago, I was like, where had everyone gone? Because I had a big following on Twitter. That following is still largely there, but a lot of people left. I thought they'd gone to Bluesky. And for a minute there, Bluesky had the juice. Like it was fun, it was interesting. And I feel like Bluesky has become the truth social of the left. It's a lot of really unpleasant people on the left who are mad at me all the time for every take that I have. And it doesn't feel as fun as it used to be. I'm a big account over there. I've got like 175,000 followers or something like that. But there's a lot of times if I tweet about anything and it's even like left of center or like normal, like me being like, I enjoy Pat McAfee's commentary during a college football game, I get yelled at. And I'm like, well, I'm not really going to stick around. I just get yelled at for things that I like. So Substack feels like where a lot of people who are trying to make sense of what's going on in Washington today have moved and are still pretty pleasant about it. Like I'm going to move to the place where there's energy and I want to have a real conversation. I talk a lot about reducing the distance to the problem. And for me as a Democratic strategist, my problem is I'm locked in an ivory tower with people who think the same, act the same, don't talk like real regular people. I think I talk like a more normal person than a lot of other people in the space. And if I'm going to reduce the distance to that problem, I made this decision years ago. I left DC, so I'm not in the DC bubble. I work in Chicago, which I think is a lot closer to real life. I keep a lot of Republicans in my life so that I know what they're thinking. I have a lot of people who are independent. I have a lot of friends in my life who voted for Trump, which I'm disappointed in, but I still love him. And then in this case, I'm reducing the distance between me and Democratic donors and activists and people who are out there knocking on doors, making small dollar donations, doing that work. I think it makes me a better strategist because I'm doing that.
I want to get to all that too, because I think that stuff is so important when we talk about the future of the Democratic Party here a little later, when we talk about Harris's decision this week not to run for governor, which means she's probably thinking about running for president again. She's got a brand new book coming out, I think, in September. I just saw the video about it today. But I want to start with the Epstein story this week, because Trump on Air Force One this week, I talked about it on the Tuesday episode for listeners if you haven't heard that. Trump basically admitted to knowing that one of the Epstein victims was trafficked out of Mar-a-Lago by Jeffrey Epstein. And he was talking about her in a way that was like, oh, he stole her as an employee, but then to later not go back and be like, uh-oh, like at the very least, right? Like there was a crime committed on my property and I didn't say anything about it. Like, Trump continually just steps in these things. Is it that he's just unwilling to get out of his own way, that he doesn't think anything is going to happen? What's your take on this whole thing right now?
Well, he for sure doesn't think he'll ever be held accountable for anything that he does. And what in Donald Trump's life would make him think that? Like,
true. Also,
real?
yeah, right. He's never been held accountable like that ever before. So why would he think it would happen now?
Yeah. So, I mean, let's be clear about something. Like the criminal justice system, there's two classes, right? There's the rest of us who have to follow the law and do the right thing, or we get punished. And then there's a class of people who are wealthy and powerful and connected, and they can basically get away with anything. Even Diddy right now is not getting the punishment that he deserves for the crimes he obviously committed because the prosecutors botched it. And may I point out that Donald Trump this week, according to Deadline, is thinking about pardoning Diddy, which says a lot about the type of people that Donald Trump is willing to pardon, right? And so I think for Trump, though, we're in like week 5. This is like a month-long scandal. I've never seen a news cycle that won't end like this. And every time he opens his mouth, it's worse. And it adds more questions to it. Like when he admitted that Virginia, the young woman who was trafficked, I believe that's her name, I had immediately like several follow-up questions for him. And I posted them on Twitter because that's the only outlet I have to ask the President of the United States questions. And listen, when you post online, there's a non-zero chance the President of the United States sees it.
He's not looking. Yeah.
Right. It's bizarre. I have a Truth Social account. Like my dream is that he'll answer one of my tweets. But, and I said, like, my questions were like, why are there teenage girls working at Mar-a-Lago? Why did Jeffrey Epstein poach them? Why did Donald Trump care so much? And these are, I think, reasonable questions that the American people have, because it's reasonable in this moment to ask if the President of the United States either is himself a pedophile, or if the President of the United States was trafficking girls, or at a bare minimum, was he protecting other traffickers and people who are abusing women? And I think it's a reasonable case. And we can talk about all the things that are sort of ancillarily out there and the creepy moments that we've had from him, Access Hollywood, or him on Howard Stern being like, what's the age limit for you? And he's like, 13 is too young for me, which is gross. And a whole bunch of other stuff. None of it's been proven, at least broken through in the way that the American people want it to be. And Epstein sort of has. And I think the reason it's broken through is because Donald Trump put the QAnon movement and this wing of the country that believes in a slew of conspiracy theories that are not true. By any objective measure, just not true. And said, you're right, I'm going to give you a home. You're right, Barack Obama was born in Kenya and I'm going to investigate. You're right, Muslims are celebrating from the rooftops in New York City. And you're right that there's a child pedophile sex ring that Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton are a part of, that, blah, blah, all this stuff. And now, in this moment, he's promised and preyed on these people and said, we're going to release the Epstein list. I'm going to tell you who really killed JFK. I'm going to tell you who really killed Martin Luther King. And he can't deliver on any of that because, and I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist. Like, generally speaking, I believe that Lee Harvey Oswald killed JFK. I forget the name of the man who killed Martin Luther King. I believe that that's the correct story based on everything that I know. And in this case with Epstein and with Diddy, you have two examples of rich, powerful, famous people preying on young women. And Donald Trump has an opportunity to expose that, but he can't because he's a part of it.
There is a thing that I think about when I talk to people that I talk to about conspiracy theories. I'm not a conspiracy theorist either, and like you, believe in the single shooter ideas of JFK and MLK. But the idea that conspiracies just can't happen in the way that people talk about them happening or the way that they describe them, because it takes too many people to hold that together. They just don't work that way. And I think there's a difference between the conspiracies that are like those, and even some of the like conspiracies around QAnon and those things that Trump pushed, that and allowed people to believe they happen that way. And the world that Trump lives in which they're not conspiracies, they're just the way people live. It's why he's thinking about pardoning Diddy. It's why he's not unopposed, apparently, to or not opposed, I should say, to pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell, or there's some sort of deal happening there. And we can talk about that in a second, because the weirdness that is what's going on with that is it's its own thing about how the DOJ is operating. But it's a disconnect that Trump sees these things as conspiracies and doesn't see these other things as maybe even wrong, but certainly not conspiracies, because it's just the way the people in his world forever have always lived. And not to say that everybody who's, a billionaire is an absolute pedophile or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just meaning that, like, the way that they move in those circles in these ways that money and power works in a way that we would look at it and might be like, that seems like a conspiracy. And he's like, that's Tuesday.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole class of people who are never held accountable for their crimes. I think that has to be said. And I compare the Epstein files a lot to the Wall Street financial crisis in 2008, because I think the reason a lot of people are really angry about our politics and don't trust our government is because tens of millions of Americans lost their home and had their lives ruined, and nobody went to prison for that. And they very clearly broke the law in what they were doing in so many different ways. And we didn't hold them accountable. And I think that is one of I love Barack Obama. I was proud to work for him in 2008 and 2007. But that was one of the mistakes that I think the Obama administration made. They were not aggressive at that. And because of that, people lost faith in the system's ability to hold powerful people accountable.
Sure. Do you think that's what's happening on the right now inside Trump world, inside the MAGA movement, that they're losing faith in this idea that Trump is a class traitor that's on their side?
So let's put it into three buckets, right? Let's talk about core MAGA Republican voters. Let's talk about independents, and let's talk about Democrats and how each group is sort of reacting to this. So on the QAnon wing of the MAGA movement, you see a lot of people online who are like, I believed that Donald Trump was going to expose this ring, and now he's a part of it, and I'm never going to vote again. And I don't believe anymore, and I'm going to withdraw. And so I think one of the big fears, if I'm Donald Trump, is these people are going to withdraw and stop caring, because he made them believe in a system they didn't believe in. He was their guy, and they put up with a lot of his crap because he was going to do things that they thought were important. And this is a big red line for a lot of people, because the Epstein case is real. Like, what happened to these young women is a real thing. It is not a conspiracy theory. Let's be clear about that. And then with independents, independent voters are furious about this. Now, they're more furious about the economy, but I think you're building a case with independent voters, and ultimately independent voters are the ones who decide elections, because that is the biggest chunk of people who vote anymore. Democrats and Republicans, people hate being labeled. Frankly, I often joke, like, if I quit working in Democratic politics, first thing I would do is label myself as an independent. Nothing about my policies would change or my voting habits would change, but like, I don't really like the idea of a label either, but like, I live in the system that I do. But with independents is like, they hate this so much, and it highlights the biggest issue for Trump. His biggest campaign promises in this last election were, on day one, grocery prices are going to go down. On day one, housing prices are going to go down. On day one, I'm going to end the war in Israel. On day one, I'm going to end the war in Ukraine. On day one, I'm going to release the Epstein files and expose all this stuff. And that tied into a lot of people, particularly young men, were really interested in it. But basically every group of people were interested. So it highlights this idea that Donald Trump is lying about everything. I'm not going to touch Medicaid. And then he passes the Republican budget, and the Republican budget cuts 20 million people off of their health care, so that rich people who Donald Trump protects and supports get another permanent tax cut. And then the tax cuts that they're giving to other people, like no tax for tips, are temporary. They expire, and they're small and they're limited. So this Republican budget that Trump signed is just an absolute disaster, but it highlights everything. Yesterday, at the time that we're recording this, the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is saying that they put a backdoor into the budget that allows Donald Trump to privatize Social Security. After Trump said, I'm not going to touch Social Security, again, another lie. So it builds this thing. Now, Epstein is not going to be the breaking point for any voter. Like, nobody's going to go, I was a Republican who voted for Trump, and then I saw this Epstein stuff, and now I'm voting for Democrats. The risk is that they stay home, or it creates the doorway for people to go, oh man, I'm being lied to. I'm being had. And so it's the sort of interesting, salacious thing that opens the door, which Trump is usually really good at opening that door. And then Democrats having the ability to go, are you mad about Epstein? Because I would also be mad about Medicare, Social Security, the state of the economy, inflation, how you're doing. And that gets some credibility back. And it's an easy opening for us. And then for the Democrats, the final bucket of this, we've been taking it on the chin for the last 6 months. Really, we've been taking it on the chin for the last year and a half. I think this party's been supremely depressed and disorganized since the Biden debate, if not before that, because I think we all knew at least in our phones. Like I never talked to anybody that worked close to Joe Biden, but we all felt like this wasn't quite right. Kamala Harris comes in with this 107-day campaign, and reinvigorates the party, but then we fall short and we lose. And now we're depressed again, and we keep taking on the chin. And this is the first time I've seen the party fully united and rally. Because it's the intersection of things that give us an opportunity to be in community with one another and give us an opportunity to hit Trump in a clean way with something that we care about, which is protecting young women. I think all Americans, for the most part, care about that. And then the Democratic Party met the moment. Like, the House Democrats have been forcing Republicans to vote on this over and over and over again, to the point that Mike Johnson closed Congress for recess early. They're on vacation right now because they don't want to vote on it.
Right. He said go and hide for the next 6 weeks, and we'll come back in September. Maybe everyone will have forgotten about this. I don't think he's going to get his wish on that thing. I really like this line of thinking, though, that the Epstein thing, while important to look at in and of itself, is also this tipping point for people to be like, oh, if he's going to lie to us about this, what else is he lying to us about? And it's just another step in everything that he's been doing so far, which is Trump is going to protect him and the people like him first. And that is his mode of operation. I mean, when I think about ending the war in Ukraine, there's a piece that I have been like working on for a few months now about how Trump is sort of this prospector president, in which, like, every time he wants to get involved in these deals, there's got to be some sort of like rare earth mineral deal that he's got to try to pull out, so that not just the US has a financial stake in it, but like some backdoor way that he does too. And that was in the original Ukraine deal that fell apart. But like, that wasn't ending the war for ending the war's sake. That was ending the war to get paid to do it. And so, like, it's the Epstein thing is this through line. When it does come to the messaging from the Democratic Party right now around Epstein, do you think they've done a good enough job? Or is there a point in which they have to be careful that they don't, I don't know, step on a landmine and force all those people who they've been sort of opening the doors to back through those doors? That, like, because Democrats are saying this, now something's up, and I can't believe that.
No. I think that the risk here is, like, again, on the ability to cut through Donald Trump's trustworthiness to a lot of people. This is the same as, I think, the Democratic Party arguing that Biden was doing okay, which is the public just didn't believe that. And I'm not a Biden hater. If you're somebody who's listening to this and you're mad at me because I'm going to say this, I respect you and I love you. But, like, one of the biggest problems in the last couple of years is that Democrats didn't have access to the bully pulpit because Joe Biden couldn't do it. And so we had all the disadvantages of being in power without a lot of the advantages of being in power. And some of why Trump makes you uncomfortable is because he's really good at yielding that bully pulpit like a club. And it's frustrating to watch because we didn't do that. And that was in no small part to Joe. Now, I'm not like a conspiracy theorist that thinks Joe was senile or they were using the auto pen. All that's nonsense.
No, yeah.
No, right. But the debate made people go, man, we've been lied to. And it's like, we were told he was okay. We were told he could do this. And even if, let's just assume for a second that, like, it was because of travel, it was because he took an Ambien or whatever the excuses are, which I don't really buy that. But even if it was, at that point, you've lost it, because now it's like, we're defending it. And then they go, well, what else is the Democratic Party lying to me about? Are they lying to me about the state of the economy? Are they lying to me about what they're doing? Are they lying to me about what they're spending their money? So we lost a lot of credibility in that to voters who don't trust either political party anyway. Because neither political party is very popular right now. A lot gets written about the Democratic Party's approval rating being at historic lows. It's at like 32%. It's low. It's embarrassing. Republican Party is at like 41% because it's completely tied to Donald Trump. So when Trump is gone, Republican Party approval rating falls right back down to where we are. What we're experiencing is a Democratic Party approval rating where the last guy that leaves the taste in people's mouth is not Barack Obama. And that's what we kind of have to deal with. And it will stay that way until we nominate somebody else. But in this instance, it's an existential crisis for Trump because it's the first real clean-cut opening that Democrats have that is on his turf in a way that I've just never seen before. Like, conspiracy theories are supposed to be his stuff. Salacious, page 6 nonsense is his stuff. And in this case, it's true. It's real. Wall Street Journal is reporting the weird birthday card that Donald Trump sent him, which is one of the I described it as like somehow weirder and dumber than I ever expected it to be.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I would say I read it in this show and like, just like, ew, I don't like, what is that? Never in my life have I ever written, read, seen anything sent from one friend to another like that. And not that, like, I don't love my friends, because I do, but that is the weirdest shit I have ever seen.
Yeah. I can't stress enough that I'm desperate for normal politicians.
Yeah.
I'm just
Oh my
desperate for
God.
people to be normal. And like, I was on X yesterday. I'm sure you've seen the Sydney Sweeney jeans ad.
Yes. Yeah.
That people are mad about. And like, you can feel however you want about it. I'm not going to like lecture people about it, but like on the far right, they are arguing that Sydney Sweeney is not hot, which is insane.
Insane.
And then on the left, they're arguing that it was an intentionally placed ad about eugenics. And I'm like, I just need people to be a little bit more normal. Like, I'm not saying the ad isn't like a little bit stupid, but like, I probably would not have approved it myself. But when we spend a bunch of time arguing about that, or when the right wing is like mad at James Gunn because he's talking about Superman being an immigrant, which is an objective fact that's at the core of every Superman movie ever made, people just look stupid, and then they just hate everybody on the far left and the far right. And we're not talking about anything about how we help people buy a house, retire with dignity, get stuff done. And we just look weird. And I don't want anything to do with that.
It is weird. I like those conversations are objectively weird. And like, I know this is off topic, but like this stuff that I think turns people off to politics. And most recently too, it's not it's the perception of lying. It's the grift and corruption we're seeing right now, but it's also the just abject weirdness of politicians. I've said before on the show that like, I've met politicians I liked. I've met ones I haven't liked. Almost all of them have been weirdos, and like to a more or lesser degree. And I think that might be part and parcel to like being somebody who wants to spend your life in the public eye in that way. But also like increasingly, they're weirder and weirder than I would prefer them to be as a person who like has my voice. You know,
so much of it is because of how distant they are to the problem. I talk about this all the time. Like Chris Rock has this movie Head of State where he's like a Chicago alderman and he runs for president, and he has a line that I just think about all the time. It's like, how are you going to help the poor if you never been poor? And I think part of the reason I'm a little bit easier at touching grass is like, I'm doing well now. I got a nice house. I got a lovely family. I can buy a nice watch whenever I want to, every now and again, to be clear, not all the time. But I can have those things because I worked hard to build a few businesses that do really, really well. One of which we're actually like selling next week, which I'm sort of excited about. And I've gotten there, but like I had to move back in with my parents twice because I went broke. And like, I know what it's like to have overdraft fees. I know what it's like to not have healthcare. I know what it's like to be down. And I think it makes me a little bit more normal because I've actually had to suffer. And I think a lot of politicians that I've met haven't had to suffer, or they're like suffered a long time ago with something. And then they got so far away from the problems. And like, I did Fox News today, and before I went on, Chuck Grassley was on before me, and Chuck Grassley is older than the invention of the chocolate chip cookie.
I know.
That's how old he is. And
is he 94?
He's like 94 years old. He's the oldest person ever to be in the Senate. It's insane. And they're going to lecture, by the way, the Republican Party wants to lecture the Democratic Party about how old our members are. But like the average age of a Republican member of Congress is 67 and a half years. It's half a year less than the Democrats. And they have the oldest United States Senator in Chuck Grassley. And they have the oldest person ever elected president in Donald Trump. And they seem so disconnected from reality in any way. Like there's nothing about the way that Donald Trump acts, thinks, talks, says, and certainly the way that he dresses, which is gaudy and horrible, that looks anything like a normal person. It's crazy to me. And because of that, his politics are so divorced from anything that's going to do anything to help improve your life.
Yes, they're too old and frankly too rich, a lot of them, that they just haven't had the same problems that average Americans have had. And I was thinking when you said the Trump thing, like even the videos, which I'm sure you saw of him golfing in Scotland last weekend, where he's blaring opera music or musicals. And not that like I don't also love musicals, but like it's a weird thing to do on the golf course, but it's a very old person thing to do on a golf course, somebody of his generation. But I mean, you said you went on Fox. What is like that? What is that like for you as somebody who does what you do to be somebody on Fox? Because there aren't a lot of people that either A, Fox is willing to bring on from the Democratic side of the aisle, or B, and I think also, and B, that Democrats don't want to go on Fox. They don't want to feel like they're going to get kicked in the teeth.
I think it's more that Democrats don't want to go on Fox than Fox won't have them on. And I think we've gotten really accustomed to our little safe spaces on MSNBC and on other shows. And I think that's fine. It has its place. I do a lot of those too. But I'm really tired of Republicans getting their news about Democrats from Republicans. Like that's how, I mean, Fox is the number one cable show in America. Withdrawing from that makes no sense. And if you live in like a lot of parts of the country where Fox News is the Bible, you haven't even seen a Democrat who talks like a normal person, because what happens is they grab the fringe of the left and they throw them on. I do Piers Morgan a lot, and Piers Morgan loves to do this. He'll like when I did my first hit on Piers, I do it probably like once a month. It was Piers, who's, kind of a wild card, mostly conservative, I would argue, but pretty much a wild card. Two frothing at the mouth, strong, manly conservatives, one effete liberal, and then me. And I'm just like, again, I think if I had a brand, I'm just like aggressively normal human being. I've got my quirks, but like I talk like a normal person. I think like a normal person. I just want to help solve problems. Really all that I want. And I actually get more frustrated at like the more effete liberal that they found who drives me crazy. It's like culturally those people, and God love them, they drive me crazy. Because they're like, well, Sydney Sweeney's in an ad about eugenics. And I'm like, it's a woman in jeans. I don't want to be this guy. Can we get back to talking about affordable housing, please? Right. And so, but that's what Fox wants to do. They want caricatures of what a Democrat is. And so there are tens of millions of people around this country who have an impression of me as a Democrat that isn't anywhere near the reality of who I am as a person. But we've allowed ourselves to be defined that way. So when I go on Fox News, they're expecting a certain view of it. And especially they love to talk about me being the founder of White Dudes for Harris, because they framed what a white dude for Harris was as basically like an incel. And I show up and I'm like a reasonably attractive man who can talk. And like, I talk like a Republican. I was raised by two Republicans. I talk like they do. I haven't cursed on this show yet, Grant, only because you told me I can only do light cursing. And I'm either curse or I don't curse. There's no middle ground. But I did the show today, and like they live in a little safe conservative bubble that they built for themselves. Last week I did it, and they asked me about inflation, and they jumped all over me because I said inflation was still high, and they were like, "No, it's not, Mike. Donald Trump's defeated inflation. He's defeated inflation. It's all gone." And I'm like, "No, it's like still 3 or 4%. It was 2.9% is the actual number. I should have had it off him, and they didn't." But they were laughing at me because I was so ridiculous that I would bring up the fact that people were mad about prices. They had me on again today for a follow-up conversation about it. And they got in my face about it again. And what I reminded them of, their own polling at Fox News shows that Donald Trump is negative 30% on his approval rating for pricing as inflation, which is as unpopular as Joe Biden ever was. And Trump is only 6 months into this thing. So they can push their narrative all they want in the same way the liberal media apparatus, such as it exists, can push their narrative all they want. But real people are going to break through this nonsense. They know that they're watching theater more often than not. Theater that they enjoy or confirms their beliefs, but they know it. And then when they go to the grocery store and everything's more expensive, they're mad. So I'd rather that, at least for me, I get 8 minutes every now and again to show you that there are Democrats out there who care about you, even if you're a conservative, who aren't going to talk down to you, who doesn't think you're dumb or a bad person because you voted for Trump, because I don't think that those people are bad. I have profound disagreements with their choices that I don't understand, but you're still my brother and you're still my sister. And my job is to try to fight for you too, whether you live in Chicago, where I'm from, or you live in a small rural community. Like, I think a lot about this Republican budget is closing all these rural hospitals. And in Nebraska, when I was on my first like real paying job in Democratic politics, I drove all around the state of Nebraska, my home state, in the little towns where the candidate I was working for would do these events called Boots and Beers. And there's a little town in Curtis, Nebraska. And I have been there, and I had an event there. It was 1 million years ago. I don't know anyone who lives there. But there's a hospital in Curtis, Nebraska that's going to shut down. And there are people who are not going to get the medical care they need because of the Republican budget. And that's the outcome of a politics that doesn't care about anything other than lining the pockets of billionaires. Because that's all that this bill does. That's all that it is. And anything else they talk about is nonsense. So like the effect of that matters to me. And I care just as much about those people as I do about the people who live down the street from me, even if I know them and I can do something about it here. I can't fix Curtis, Nebraska right now, but I still care about them. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely makes sense. And I think that actually gets us. I think that's great. And I think it's important too to think about those things, that the way that the people who watch Fox News and let's say the middle of the country, if we want to be broad about it, just aren't exposed to normal Democrats. I mean, I worked in Waco, Texas. I worked in Oklahoma City. I'm here in Detroit now, but I've worked in Detroit and worked in Boston, and then came back to Detroit. And like, Boston is a far cry from Waco, Texas, or Oklahoma City, and the way that the people in Texas and Oklahoma think about what a Democrat is and how those things work. And I think that actually gets us into the next part of what I wanted to ask you about, which was Kamala Harris saying she's not going to run for the governor of California, because you know her. This decision to me signals that she wants to be the future of the Democratic Party, even though she's from California and did not do very well in the 2024 election. We can also talk about how a lot of that, I think, has to do with being hindered by Biden not dropping out when he should have, and also trying to build a campaign while also running it in 100 days, which is nearly impossible. And like, yes, there were missteps. They might have done that as good as you could have in that amount of time. But do you think she's going to run in 2028 here? Is that what's going on?
I don't know what she's going to do. And I don't think anybody does except for maybe her and God. That's about it. And probably Doug, who's cheering her on. By the way, Doug Emhoff is one of the nicest human beings on the planet, is a full-on wife guy, and I love him for it.
I said he was the best part of the DNC. He was my favorite speaker at the DNC. He was really good.
Which is amazing because he came right before Barack Obama.
Yes, I know.
I was about as close as you could be to Doug Emhoff at that moment while sitting in the stands, because I was with my friends in the Nebraska delegation, and I was like, man, if I threw a rock right now, I could hit. I'm not going to. Look, I don't know what Harris is going to do. My view of this is, one, she has served the people of California and the people of this country her entire adult life. She's been prosecutor, attorney general, district attorney, senator, vice president. She's entitled to be a private citizen. She's entitled to go make money and find her version of what private citizen doing good looks like. She's got a book that's coming out. I'm sure that book tour will be well timed for the midterms. I'm a Democratic strategist. I'm certainly able to like read the signs of like when book tours are coming and what they mean. So I don't know. I think if I'm her, I'm going to keep my options open, and I'm going to track the polls and see where my brand generates to. Like, do things crater so much that a lot of people start to go, you know what, I wish I'd given Kamala a chance? Does the sort of Biden fatigue, which I think drags down the Democratic Party brand, go away? Do stronger candidates emerge that Kamala feels like she can't get in the race? I don't know. And I'm not in a position here where like I'm working. I advise candidates that may run for president one day, but I'm not working for a candidate that's told me they're running or anything. So I tend to just go, keep your options open, decide what you want to do, make the best decision you can. I think in the case for Harris, she's going to have to answer tough questions about the Biden White House. And my inclination is to run a candidate in 2028 that probably wasn't part of the Biden administration, or was at least far enough removed from it that we don't have to answer those questions, so we can move beyond it. Because I don't want to get dragged. I don't want JD Vance to have that as a weapon, a cudgel in a general election that distracts us from what will be, I believe, continued destruction and mayhem by the Trump administration. But that doesn't mean that Harris can't overcome that. And she can't overcome the other things that I think hindered her. And you mentioned the primary. I think, Jake Tapper's book, Original Sin, is one of the most frustrating books I've ever read. And I always tell people I only believe half of it, but the half of it I believe really pisses me off. There's my light cursing. We finally got there, Grant.
There you go.
And then, but what I appreciate about the book is like the title is Original Sin, and Original Sin was the decision to run for re-election.
Yeah.
And that deprived Democratic voters nationwide of a full, vibrant, open primary where we could have nominated a candidate. Now, I believe most likely that candidate would have been Kamala Harris. But if Kamala Harris had to earn the nomination that way, opposed to the other way, then she would have been a better candidate for it, because she would have had to have built the campaign apparatus, raised all the money, done a million podcasts, done a million TV hits, and she would have been a stronger candidate for the general with a fully fleshed out brand identity and messaging strategy in a way that she did not have in 107 days. And if she hadn't risen to that occasion, then somebody else would have emerged. And the last time we had a full Democratic primary without a sitting vice president in it was 2008. And we nominated Barack Obama, who was the best generational political talent of my lifetime by a mile. And so I want a big, messy primary. If that includes Kamala Harris, great. I don't think anybody is going to not get in the race because she's in, which is not a slight to her. I think she saved the Democratic Party, but I think we should have a big, messy fight and talk about what the future of the Democratic Party looks like, and then see what that looks like as we go through the primary.
One of the conversations, especially as I'm sitting here in Detroit and I'm 10 minutes from Dearborn, Michigan, which in the country is the largest population of Arab Americans. One of the conversations that will follow Harris, I think that's outside of the Biden campaign and the Biden administration, is the Democratic Party's approach to Israel and Gaza, and especially with what we've seen come out of Gaza this week. And I don't know if you listened to the Pod Save America crooked guys, but who are basically saying that...
I haven't yet, but I have it on the list.
They basically said this week that the Democratic Party needs a wholesale changeover in the way that they approach Israel and the Israeli government. Not the idea of Israel or Zionism, but the way that they approach the policies of the current government in Israel. Is that something that you think Harris could navigate? Is there anybody in the Democratic Party right now who could navigate that in a way that would feel authentic, but also strategic?
I don't know. It's a tricky issue, and I think if you line up 1,000 Democrats, you'll get 1,000 different answers to the conflict in Israel and Gaza. I will say that we have reached a turning point in this where I think the starvation that's happening in Palestine right now is unacceptable to everybody, where it extends from, a lot of Democrats who were speaking out about it to Marjorie Taylor Greene being like, this is wrong. I can't stand up for this anymore, which, by the way, who knew Marjorie Taylor Greene had a heart? I didn't know that. Politics are strange bedfellows, man. I often think about how I voted for the same presidential candidate as Dick Cheney last year. And if you went back in time to 16-year-old me protesting the Iraq War and explained that, I'd be like, how did I become a Republican? What happened? Right. I'd be super confused. And no, it's the other way around. Dick Cheney came with me.
Does it make you a little fucking queasy? It makes you a little,
more than a little queasy. More than a little queasy. Like a lot of people rag on the Harris campaign for having Liz Cheney out at the events. And I'm sure with whatever data they had, that was a justifiable decision. But even like when it was happening, even I was like, I don't know. Man. Like, I can't. But also, my new best friend is former Republican Congressman Joe Walsh, who's a Tea Party Republican who drove me nuts 20 years ago, and we've agreed to never look up the tweets that we sent each other 20 years ago. But we're best friends, and we're actually going to be like hosting a show together on Substack starting tomorrow from the day that this is recorded, which I'm sort of excited about because I like the guy a lot. So like politics can change people, and people can move, and that's okay. But I think on Israel and Palestine, like I'd like to get back to just like some relative common sense consensus on these issues, because I think they're so emotional. And one of the things that drives me nuts, and I say this as a white man that does not have the same experience that a lot of other people have, but I feel like part of the reason the discourse on Israel and Palestine is so often like skewed is that we're taking the context of the way that race is viewed in the United States and then layering on top of a foreign conflict that a lot of people don't understand. And like, I'm not going to tell you that I understand it. Like, I'm not here to like mansplain it to anybody or Democrat explain it to you, however you want to describe it, is because it's the expert you should bring an expert on your show to talk about it. To me, it's like I want all the hostages brought home safely if they're still alive. I think Israel has a right to exist and has a right to defend itself. I think Palestine also has a right to exist. And the Gazans don't deserve to be starved the way that they're being. And I just feel like that's like a position that like 80% of people have. And what I would like to do is get to a point where we get back to that, because I do think like really government has been very aggressive in a way that I'm extremely uncomfortable with. And I don't think this can continue. And I think they're losing their allies that they have, as staunch as they are. I mean, what was it? 27 Democrats voted yesterday for an arms embargo, essentially. Like that's a right number for them. So and they're overplaying their hand, and Trump is allowing them to overplay their hand, which is another point I want to make here, which is that Donald Trump is not the leader of the free world. I don't know who is, but Donald Trump doesn't lead the world. And if you listen to him right now, he'll be like, I've ended 6 wars and I deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. But like the conflict between India and Pakistan never, ever happens with a strong American president. The conflict that's happening between Singapore and Thailand never happens if there's a strong American president and a diplomatic corps that is designed to prevent those things from happening. Because most of the time, my dad was an FBI agent for a really long time, for 30 years before he retired. And most of the things that my dad, I have to assume, because even I don't even know the extent of it, most of the things that my dad accomplished in his career, I'll never know about, because there's things that he prevented from happening, or people that he arrested before they did really bad things. I think that's also true of people in the diplomatic corps who prevent these conflicts from happening, and they save lives. And because we have a weak American president who has dismantled the State Department for the most part and has put, frankly, a moron in charge, and Pete Hegseth, like he is unqualified for that job. He's not the only one, in my opinion, who's unqualified for the job, but he's the poster child for it, right next to Dan Bajingo, or however you say his last name. Mr. goes on Fox News, talks about how much his wife hates him, which I have zero sympathy for him from. It's just, he's a great guy. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if I were married to him, I'd be happy. Grateful to be married to me, for Christ's sake. But again, I just like to get back to some sense of like rationality to it. And I really, truly think like 80% of Americans are really normal, reasonable, rational human beings. We're separated by some really big things we disagree on. And then the algorithms are just trying to like push us apart, and politicians are trying to push us apart and be stupid. But like most people are normal, rational. You lock them in a room, they can handle any issue.
Yeah. And speaking of that, what do you make of Marco Rubio right now? If we're going to talk about the diplomatic corps, this is a dude who, when he gets nominated for this, everybody, frankly, myself included on this show, was like, that's a pretty normal choice for somebody who would be a Secretary of State. He might even be like a steady hand at the till. a little bit here as we're looking at the war in Israel and Gaza and the war in Ukraine and some if not a lot of geopolitical movement in all of Asia right now. And then he just turns out to not be that. What is that?
Marco Rubio is dead inside. I don't know why. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know what they have on him. But like, I've always thought that Marco Rubio is one of the most overrated politicians in America. I have felt that this whole time. The second most overrated politician in America is Ron DeSantis, because the media fawned over how great Ron DeSantis was. And I kept going, you guys don't know. He's a D-list politician that only won because of Donald Trump. Like, Trump's take on DeSantis was absolutely right. And that's why he never even came close to defeating Trump. Nikki Haley was a better candidate that people should have rallied around, and they didn't. I'll tell you right now, I think if they had run Nikki Haley for president in 2024, they win like 48 states against the Democratic Party. Because like, this country is crying out for like a normal president. And they were really mad at Democrats. And I think Nikki Haley could have been like, I'm a normal person. I'm going to try to get prices down. I'm going to like try to like turn the rhetoric down, and we're going to turn the page on this movement. And like that, we got killed in that. Even with Kamala Harris switch. As much as like Nikki Haley has lots of things I don't believe in, I just think that would have been a very dangerous political moment for the Democrats. On Rubio, I mean, I think he just cares about proximity to power. And I would walk you through like, his eyes for a second is, I'm Marco Rubio, was heralded as the future of the Republican Party. Here's my Time magazine cover that I'm assuming sadly hangs in his house somewhere about how he's the rights Barack Obama. And stuff like that is really embarrassing when it doesn't come to fruition. It's cool when it does, but then later when you have it, it just makes you sad. I assume I don't have a Time magazine cover for myself.
Yeah. It's not behind you there. Got it. Okay.
No, it's not behind me. No, this is just a photo of me completing an 8K over here. So,
oh, well, that's still pretty cool. Yeah. Hey.
I don't know if you released this as video, but that's going to be an embarrassing moment.
Yeah.
But, then he runs for president. He gets creamed by a reality TV show host who makes fun of him all the time. He goes back to the Senate. Remember, he didn't want to go back to the Senate. Like, he was like, I'm going to retire. And they twisted his arm to come back. And he seems like he's hated it every moment since. So I think from his perspective, he's like, proximity to power. Let me get into a place where maybe someday I can control my own destiny. Like, he's going to run for president, I assume, in 28 against Pence and the rest of them. God knows who else is going to run. That'll be, I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about the Democratic Party primary. That's going to be a mess. Wait till the Republican primary. It's going to be Game of Thrones over there. So,
because there is a thing too, like in the 2028 Republican primary, that like there isn't anybody who can out charisma Trump. One of his great talents as a politician is he's just got that thing, and like he just does.
I actually push back on this because I have a
yeah, go for it. I find it disturbing.
Donald Trump is a terrible politician who shoots himself in the foot all the time. And if he could just be charismatic as hell, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there aren't like positives to objectively take away from his performance, but the man gets in his own way more than he makes the right decision. And he ran a bad campaign in 2016 and he ran a bad campaign in 2024. And I'm a big baseball fan. I'm a big football fan. Like, there are times when your team loses and there are times when your team gets beat. And we lost in the last two in the two times we lost to Trump are times that we lost. We didn't get beat. It wasn't like Donald Trump is unstoppable and we can't do anything about it. It's that we kept doing stupid stuff. And really upsetting the American people. And like, God love Hillary Clinton, who's an amazing public servant. She was not the right candidate for the right moment. She just wasn't. And I think the two times we lost to Donald Trump were the times we didn't have full, vibrant, open primaries. We just didn't. The one time we did, we had a full and vibrant primary, and we nominated Biden, which I think was short-term expediency and long-term a problem, because the Democratic Party loves to look backwards for its leaders. And so nominating a very old man was not moving the country forward in that direction. I would probably, in hindsight, would rather have nominated someone who was younger that fell short, but gave us an opportunity to press forward to the future than like turned back to Joe Biden in that moment. I mean, I was on Harris at the time, so that was my belief. I thought she could win. I still think she could have won in 2020, but we keep turning backward. And like, and I think you see Democrats doing that right now. And this is not a criticism of anybody, but like, so I love Roy Cooper, for example. He's a former governor of North Carolina. He's one of the best talkers in the party. I'll be supporting him in that Senate race, but we're turning back to look for somebody for the future that maybe gets us a Senate seat for a cycle or two, but we're not building up a new bench. We're trying to recruit Janet Mills in Maine. Again, these are logical choices if you're the Democrats trying to figure out how to get back into the Senate, but we still haven't done a good enough job elevating that bench to the point that we're in a strong position. So I feel like the party keeps looking backwards in a way that doesn't always make sense and is often frustrating and then stifles our ability for the future. So Biden was sort of the same. We looked backwards to move forwards, and then we got hit again. Hillary Clinton, I think to a certain degree, we were looking backwards to go forwards again. And we had other options at the time that we should have pursued. And part of it's that the Democratic Party is kind of unwilling to let the next generation take over. And I'm 20 years in. I feel like we're multiple generations of this happening with the same generation in charge. And it's not an attack on people. I love everybody that I work with. I really do. There are a lot of great leaders. It's just, it's frustrating. And I don't know what the solution to it is. And like, I worked for Mallory McMorrow in the Michigan Senate race. I think she represents the next generation of Democratic leadership. And she ain't waiting to be told to wait for her turn. And I think a lot of other people aren't either. And they should get out there and fight to build a better party.
Is that the thing? Because the people that I've had on the show who have been, a part of the Democratic Party in the way that, that you are, is that we have to move past, as the Democratic Party, this DNC old guard, which is really entrenched. And the DNC is a powerful party. It is. But so often when you have these new voices, they get branded immediately as too far left for the kind of normal person that you've been talking about this whole time. How do you, as someone who works with these people, how do you combat that? How do you get the messaging to meet where the messenger is?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. Like one, the DNC is not a powerful party. Let's be clear about that. I think that people have a misunderstanding of what the party apparatus looks like. The DNC is a fundraising vehicle to win general elections. So now there's a broader Democratic Party, but I always tell people the way to think about it is the Democratic Party is a loose collection of interests. All right, and there is the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee that elects Senate Democrats. There's a DCCC that elects the House. There's a DGA that does governors. There's a DLGA that does lieutenant governors. They are powerful individually in their spheres of trying to promote and push their candidates. But they're not all knowing, all seeing at all times. And I think that there is a class of consultants that get in the way. I would argue I am I'm not part of that class, but that class doesn't hate me is how I would put it. So because I try to be functionally useful, but also push people in the right direction. That's why I sort of toe the line. Like if you look at my resume, it's like Bernie Sanders in 2016, Kamala Harris in 2020, Barack Obama when he got started, but also like primary members of Congress. Like I'm a little all over the place, mostly because I try to win elections when it's practical. And then I also try to find those moments when I can like push for a candidate I really believe in. And like Mallory McMorrow's perfect example of that. Lauren Underwood's perfect example of that. Like two candidates I really believe in. Peggy Flanagan in Minnesota, like younger candidates that I love, that I think you're in it for the right reasons. And I want to do this. So you'll see me involved in these primaries. But I think the other thing on ideology, because you brought up ideology here, the way that like people who are politically active or politically engaged are, like you and I, and I'm assuming most of your listeners are, we assume that there are ideologies that are consistent across party lines. These ideologies for normal people are all over the place. And people don't have as like core held beliefs on certain issues as a lot of us do. Not because there's anything wrong with them. It's because they don't think about it as much as we do. And they're more like, who's going to help me put food on the table or buy a house or retire with dignity? That's why you have people who voted for Donald Trump, but then also voted for Zohran Mamdani in the New York City mayoral primary. So it's this weird kind of complicated thing. And if you look, there's a ton of people whose voting records are this: Obama, Trump, Biden, Trump. And what do you learn in that? I think you learn that there are a lot of people that are trying to figure out who the hell is fighting for them and who the hell is going to make their life a little bit easier and that they're struggling. And we know that basically 80% of this country is struggling because they're not making enough money. Everything's more expensive and the system just doesn't work for them. So they're willing to take risks, which is why I think you'll see more Zohran Mamdani. It's also why you'll see more Donald Trumps. Now, they won't be exactly the same because Trump and Mamdani are not the same. I'm not equating them to the same type of thing. I'm just saying they're both risks from the political norm because the norm doesn't matter. And I was talking to someone who does focus groups yesterday, and they were telling me like they've done a focus group like every day, like every business day of their life for like the last like 10 years. And they meet so many people that she believes is the majority of people who will tell you that they're pro-life. And then the next words out of their mouth was, but I think women should have the right to choose. And to a politically engaged, active person who's put in these buckets, who has these conversations, that doesn't make any sense because the pro-life movement is supposed to be about being anti-choice. And I don't think that's how most people think about it. I don't think that's how most people hear those words. So like when you see a Gallup poll that's like 65% of Americans say they're pro-life, that's just people going, yeah, life is cool. We should preserve life. It seems important to me. But also the government shouldn't be telling women what to do with their bodies. So those are not competitive things. And it's another thing I talk a lot about on my show on Substack is allowing people the space to be fully realized human beings who get to the same solution or to the same coalition in a very different way. And the example that I'll give you is a personal one for me. I was raised Catholic. My Catholicism is a core part of my faith. I started going to church recently again. I spent a lot of time thinking about being my brother's keeper and the foundations of my reason for being a Democrat. And one of those things that's always made me slightly uncomfortable is in the abortion debate. And I want to be clear, I am strongly pro-abortion rights. Like women, the government should not be telling women what to do with their bodies. Women should be able to make those decisions with a doctor in the best interest of themselves, their child, and their family, period. No doubt about that in my mind. But I believe that life begins at conception. That is a deeply held religious belief that I have, that I've been taught my whole life. And on top of that, I can validate that from my own life, which is that my wife and I have had a series of miscarriages in the sake of building our family. We have one beautiful boy who's 6 years old, and we're lucky to have him. His name actually means gift from God, specifically because I feel so damn lucky to have him. But one of the very first miscarriages that we had, we named the child Zeke. And at 8 weeks, Zeke had a heartbeat. And at 9 weeks, Zeke didn't have a heartbeat. And you will never convince me that that wasn't life. You just won't. And doesn't mean I'm a bad person. Doesn't mean I disagree with you. Doesn't mean if you threw me in Congress tomorrow, I wouldn't vote with Planned Parenthood, probably pretty close to 100%, because there's the role of government. But giving people a different path to get there and not judging them because they require a different path. And on abortion rights, again, I'll give you another example, because I think about this through the lens of being a man and how we win men back, because Democrats are getting our clocks clean with men basically across the board, but especially young men. How much money did we spend to tell men to vote for Kamala Harris to protect their wives' abortion rights or their wives' fundamental rights, which is, again, that's the right thing to do. I agree with that intentionality. It's an important thing for me. But we also didn't tell a lot of men about the stakes of their life. So how much money did we spend telling men to vote for Kamala Harris to protect their wives' rights, which is the right thing to do? But we didn't spend any money or time or attention telling them about the stakes they have if abortion rights are fully outlawed, or what the same people who want to ban abortion want to do. So like, if you live in a world that's not abortion and you get your girlfriend pregnant, you might be paying child support for the rest of your life. And that will change the impact of your life. And you have the right to determine your life on your terms. And the same people, I remind people of this all the time, the same people that want to ban abortion also want to tell you who you can or cannot marry. They want to tell you what you can or cannot do with your body. They want to tell you what type of pornography you can watch online and how you can access it. They want to tell me, someone who has fertility issues with my spouse, that I can't use IVF, because a lot of the same people that want to ban abortion also think IVF is a sin, which is insane. And I don't want to attack anybody for their religious beliefs, but like, IVF is a gift from God that allows me to have my kid. And that is like, God has provided that to me, and science has provided that to me. So those things are not in opposition. But we should have more leaders who can speak to that and who can give those paths to people on a variety of different issues. I feel this way about guns too. I think there are different ways to talk about guns. I think there's different ways to talk about faith. There's different ways to talk about community. And we should be empowering people to get here instead of making them feel judged for having a different viewpoint, because they're going to go to a place where they have community, and they're going to gravitate towards the place that makes them feel more open and available when you only have two options. You know, Andrew Yang got flayed for this after the election, but I do think it was good political commentary. Andrew Yang was like, when you give people two shitty choices, they'll pick one. And like, people made fun of him, but like, that's true. Like,
yeah. You said something there a little bit ago that I think is a good place to kind of wrap this up. But actually, it's this idea of finding a candidate who envisions the idea of your brother's keeper. That I think that when you ask most Americans and most people, that's kind of how they live their lives. They don't want to hurt anybody. They want to get up. They want to go to work. They want to do well there. They want their kids to go to school and be safe. They want to come home and be able to put food on the table, go to bed, and do it all over again the next day. And I just don't think that there are many politicians out there right now on either side of the aisle who are very good at meeting them there. And is it just because it's not where the money is? It's not where donors are? Or is that just this class of politicians we have, going back to what we said earlier, are just increasingly weirdos? And the next thing for the Democratic Party needs to be somebody who can speak that language, whether or not they get branded, too far to the right by people on the left or too far to the left by people to their right. It's going to be about finding that section of how to meet people where they are.
The number of good people willing to run for office is small. And I think that a lot of times when they do, they then don't understand how the system works. So then they end up jumping into the wrong race, or they don't hire the right team, and they get taken advantage of by a class of political consultant that doesn't care about them. And that is a different problem that a lot of us are trying to solve, of like, how do we get better at candidate recruitment and creating pipelines? You had Amanda Littman on your show. Amanda is probably the single most important person trying to solve that problem. I tell her all the time, I love that you're solving that problem, because that problem pisses me off and I don't know how to fix it. And that's why we need Amandas out there. And I listen, as someone who steps forward and try to solve some of the problems in the movement. I respect anybody who at least gives a damn and tries. I think we do have a lot of weirdos. I don't have any way around it. I'm not going to name any names. Some of them are probably my clients and God. But I do think like there's this idea that I hear a lot about, and I had a guest on my show talk about it like 2 weeks ago, of dark woke. And it's that we're going to take power again. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a mustache twirling, brandy sipping, late at night president of the United States that's a Democrat. And he's going to be staying up late thinking about ways to fuck with the Republican Party and get our revenge for everything that's happening right now. That is the wrong point. And I named my Substack Endless Urgency because the one thing I admire about Donald Trump and what they're doing right now is how creative it is and urgent it is, and it feels nonstop. And Endless Urgency has been my life motto for many years, so I just repurposed it for this. But what's my Democratic Party version of that? It is not to get the Republicans back. Like, I would like to stay up late at night twirling my own mustache and sipping, probably not a brandy. I'm not really a brandy man, but drinking a Guinness would probably be more my late night drink.
That's a little more Chicago, yeah.
To an Irishman, a Guinness is just a glass of water. That's all it is. And, you know, but I want to be thinking about, how do I make sure everybody has access to healthcare? How do I make sure that people have good jobs and lives of purpose? How do I make sure that young people, when they're getting out of college, aren't saddled with an insane amount of debt? How do I make sure that people who are sick don't have medical debt that's preventing them from buying a house or moving forward with their lives? How do I make sure that people who are taking care of kids and taking care of their grandparents at the same time getting sandwiched this generation, which is a lot of millennials right now, how that they can have enough room to survive? Because people want to work hard. They want to have a job. They want to have a purpose. They want to earn their way in life. But they're doing everything right. They're doing everything right. They're going to college. They're getting married. They're doing the things they're supposed to do. They're trying to put money away. That money's not compounding the way that it should because the economy's not working the way that it should. They're spending way too much money because everything's too expensive. And then they've got student loan debt that's just eating away at them, and it's taken 30 years to pay for it in a way that, like, our parents' generation didn't have to deal with that. They just didn't. Like, they were lucky enough that, like, the system still worked just enough that they could work hard and buy a house and retire with dignity. And you can't do that right now. You just can't. Like, I'm lucky enough to be in that position because I'm, like, exceedingly lucky with a very marketable skill, which is great. But it doesn't make me any better than somebody. Like, there are a lot of people who are, frankly, in my opinion, working harder than me, and have been dealt a different set of cards than me in the poker game, and that's messed up. So I want to figure out how to solve that. So when I'm up late at night, I want to be thinking about solutions to that, and I want the next Democratic president to be thinking about creative, interesting solutions to how to do that. And if it pisses off Republicans I don't like, that's just a bonus. That's not, if somewhere Charlie Kirk is like, rah, 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 we're helping people, rah, 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 I'm fine with that. Like, fuck that guy. All right. But that should not be the motivator, because when Donald Trump is up late at night, posting on Truth Social from the bathroom, he's thinking about owning his haters. He's not thinking about delivering for you. And so, I just want to get back to that. And I don't think that's like a Democrat or Republican idea. I think it's just like 80% of the country would really like to get back to doing something that moves this country forward, not trying to, like, pull us all back to a vision of the 1950s that isn't going to work and didn't work then the way that they think it does now. I don't want us to become like a bizarro version of the Democratic Party. Like, the Democratic Party is the only party in this country that cares about whether or not you have a good paying job, cares about whether or not you can retire, cares about whether or not you can live a life of purpose and retire with dignity, or start a family on your own terms. And that's why I've always been a Democrat. Like, people ask me all the time, like, Mike, what does the Democratic Party stand for? Why are you a Democrat? Like, that's my answer. It's the only party that cares. Are we sometimes really stupid? Do we sometimes care about the wrong things? Do we sometimes, maybe not me, but do we sometimes have a lot of people in the party that want to nanny state you? Yeah, we do. I have a lot of people like that where I'm like, what are you doing? I don't understand this. But at least we care, and we're rowing in a boat in a direction of progress and trying to help one another. I'll take that every single day, because I don't see that on the Republican side. I don't. What I see is a lack of empathy, and I see a lot of hate. And I see a lot of miserable people too. is the other thing. They don't seem like they're happy. And I'm a joyful warrior. I'm mad about what's happening right now, and I care about my community and I care about my friends, but I'm not going to be miserable about it because I just don't think there's any value to that. And they seem fucking miserable to me.
They do.
Elon Musk, Donald Trump, they all seem miserable.
Angry and miserable.
Yes. And they want you to be angry and miserable too.
Yes.
And that isn't right either.
Yes. And I will tell you, depending on the morning, I am. That's I think we all are a little bit. Yeah.
I tell people in this space all the time, if you don't think about quitting politics at least once a week, you're not really working at politics.
Yes. Fair.
Now, a couple of weeks ago when Ken, there was a leaked call from Ken Martin where he was like, man, there's days where I think, is this even worth doing? And people were making fun of him. And I was like, that's the most relatable shit I've ever heard.
That is exactly, that's very,
I've been doing this for 20 years. I want to quit all the time. But I won't because I care. And I want people in the foxhole like Ken. I know Ken to be a man of principle and character and a really good human being who gets it more often than he doesn't. And I want to be in the foxhole with guys like that.
Well, I mean, don't quit because I want to have you back on the show a little later when you find a non-weirdo to run for president in 2020.
I can't quit. I don't have any other skills at this point. What am I supposed to do? You're going to give me like a corner office job and be like, at 9:30. I'm like,
no, me either. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm surrounded by Star Wars Legos and D&D books.
Listen, if I walk you just outside here, I have that exact same Star Wars.
I've got all of them. I got all of it.
Yeah, I have all of them out here. I decided that the Legos were not cool enough for the man cave den that I've
behind you.
Yeah. I admire your setup though. Mine's a little bit dark and brooding.
It's moody.
It's moody. I think it fits me perfectly though. It feels like a gamer vibe, which is what I wanted. So,
well, Mike, man, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I think this was such a great conversation. Really.
You too. Thank you, Grant. Appreciate it.
I want to thank Mike for coming on the show again, and I'll link to his new Substack, Endless Urgency, in the show notes if you want to check out more of the stuff that Mike has to say, and hopefully in the near future, you'll hear me on his podcast. But until then, that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching today. Make sure that you're following and subscribe, rate and review the episode on whatever podcast app you listen to it on. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, leave a comment below if you're a watcher on YouTube. It really helps boost the show. And as always, sign up for the Make It Make Sense Substack. It is just $5 a month for all this great bonus content I'm putting up there weekly. And share the show on social media. It's Mims News Pod. That's MIMS News Pod, all one word on every platform. I am at Granthermes on Twitter and Bluesky, and at Granthermes TV on everything else. Thank you so much for listening today. I'm Granthermes, and I'll talk to you on Tuesday.